Alright, so I'm going to go through the quiz review for tomorrow's quiz, which is over simplifying, multiplying, and dividing radicals. So this first page is just simplifying, so we're going to work through these. So I'm starting with the square root of 288. So the way that we simplify is we're going to try and factor this down. Since I'm taking the square root, I'm looking for groups of 2 within this number, so I'm just going to begin dividing. I know that 288, it's an even number, so if it's even and it's a large number, I usually try and divide by 16 first, just because that's a larger even number, and when I divide by 16, I get 18, which works. 16 is a perfect square that breaks into 4 and 4. 18 breaks into 9 and 2, and 9 breaks into 3 and 3. So now I can easily identify my groups of 2. So I have 2 4s, 2 3s, and I have a leftover 2. So when I rewrite this, I'm going to take out my pairs. So I was able to group together 2 4s, so I take out a 4. I'm going to take out a 3, multiply those together, and I'm going to leave the 2 on the inside. So 4 times 3 gives me 12, square root of 2, and that's my final answer. All right, looking at number 2, this time we're playing the game called Let's Make Groups of 4. So as I split down the number 405, I'm going to be looking for groups of 4. Now 405 ends in the number 5, so I know it's divisible by 5, and I will give that a try. So when I divide by 5, I get 5 and 81, and then 81 splits into 9 and 9. Now, because I'm making groups of 4, if I was taking the square root, I could stop here, but I'm looking for a group of 4, so I've got to break these 9s down into 3s. 3 times 3, 3 times 3, and there I have my group of 4 3s. And I have this 5 left over. So the fourth root of 405 would be 3, and then the fourth root, don't forget that 4, of 5. The 5 stays inside. All right. Looking at number 3, once again, I'm going to be breaking down this number 250. I'm looking for groups of 3. And also, I want to notice that I have a coefficient. So this number is going to need to come out on the other side. 250, I'll break it down into 25 and 10. 25 breaks into 5 and 5. 10 breaks into 5 and 2. So there I have my group of 3 5s. With a 2 left over. So the 5s will come out, and the 2 will stay under the radical. Negative 3 times 5 gives me negative 15, square root of 2. All right, for this next one, I have 3 times the square root of 192. There's no index here, so we assume it's a 2, so we're going to be making groups of 2. 192 is a large even number, so I could try the number 16 first. I also know 9 plus 2 plus 1 is 12, so this number should be divisible by 3 as well. But when I divide by 16, I get 16 and 12. 16 splits into 4 times 4. 12 can break into 4 times 3, and this 4 will break into 2 times 2. So if I'm looking for groups of 2, I have 2 4s, 2 2s, and a 3 left over. So to finish this off, I'm going to remember my coefficient of 3, and then I'm going to multiply my 4s, my 2s, and I'm going to leave the 3 in the square root. So to simplify here, I have 3 times 4, which is 12, times 2 is 24, square root of 3. That's my final answer. All right, moving on to the next one. I'm taking the square root of 80. So 80 breaks down into 8 and 10. 8 breaks into 4 and 2. 10 breaks into 5 and 2. 4 breaks into 2 and 2. So I'm making groups of 2, so I have 2 2s, another set of 2s, and this 5 is left all alone. So if I take out the first 2, the second 2, and then leave the 5 inside. 2 times 2 gives me 4, square root of 5. All right, taking the square root of 45, breaks down into 9 times 5, and 9 breaks into 3 times 3. So if I'm looking for groups of 2, I've got 3 threes. I've got a pair of 3s, and I have a 5 left over. So this simplifies to be 3 square root of 5. All right, this next one I have a coefficient of -6, so I'm going to make sure to remember that. I'm going to begin splitting up 256. That's a large even number. So if it's a large even number, I try 16 first, and sure enough, 256 is a perfect square that splits into 16 and 16. If I have r cubed, that means I have 3 r's. So when I make my pairs, I have a pair of 16s, I have a pair of r's, and I have 1 r left over. So if I take out the 16s, I take out the r, and I leave behind this r, I should be able to get my final answer. -6 times 16 is -96 r square root of r. Finally, number 8, I have a coefficient of 7 that I want to remember to take out. 48 will break down for me. I can factor this down into 8 and 6. 8 breaks into 4 and 2. 3 breaks into 2 and 3. And this 4 breaks into 2 and 2. Since I'm looking for groups of 2, I have a group of 2 here, a group of 2 here, and a leftover 3. However, before I begin bringing this out, I'm going to deal with my variables. When I look at the x's, I have 3 x's. I have a single y, so that's going to go inside, and then I have 2 z's. So I have 2 x's, so one pair will come out, this will stay in, and then the z's will come out because they make a pair. So I'm multiplying everything by 7. I'm going to take out a 2 and another 2. I'm going to take out an x and a z. Inside the radical, I'll have my leftover 3, my leftover x, and the y. So to simplify, I have 7 times 2 times 2, which is 28, xz square root of 3xy. All right, I'm going to move on to the next page. On this page, we're going to be multiplying and dividing radical expressions. All right, starting with number 9. When I'm multiplying, I multiply coefficients together and then radicands together. So I have a 2 and a coefficient of 1. 2 times 1 will give me 2. Square root of 3 times square root of 2 gives me the square root of 6. This cannot be simplified because the factors of 6 are 3 and 2, so there's no pairs. So this is my final answer. For square root of 15 times -4 square root of 5, I have a coefficient of 1 times -4, which gives me -4, and I have 15 times 5. 15 times 5 gives me the square root of 75. Then I'm going to break this down. I can break it back down to 5 and 15, which breaks into 5 and 3. So if I'm looking for groups of 2, I'm going to make a group of 2 with these 5s, and I'll have a 3 left over. So to rewrite this expression, I have a -4 times 5 square root of 3. -4 times 5 is -20, and then I have the square root of 3. So that is the final answer. Looking at number 11, I have no coefficients. I'm just going to multiply what's inside the radicand. 6 times 8 is 48. P squared times p squared. Remember our rule of exponents. If I have x to the a times x to the b, I'm going to add those exponents together. So I'm going to add 2 plus 2, and I'm going to get p to the 4th, and this should all be under the radical. Now I'm going to try and simplify this. 48 splits into 6 and 8, 3 and 2, 2 and 4, 2 and 2, and p to the 4th means I have 4 p's. So if I'm making groups of 2, I have these 2's right here, these 2's, a leftover 3, and I have a group of p's and a group of p's. So I have no coefficient in front, so I'm going to bring out the 2 2's, I'm going to bring out the 2 p's, and I'm going to leave the 3 behind. So this will simplify to 2 times 2 is 4, p times p is p squared, square root of 3. Alright, the next problem, I have a coefficient of 1 times a coefficient of -5, so I get -5. 12 times 15, I need to multiply that. And I get 180, this is under the square root. Okay, 180. I have b to the third and b to the second, so I'm going to add those exponents. 3 plus 2 gives me b to the fifth. Now to simplify, I'm going to split this down into 18 and 10, 9 times 2, and 2 times 5. The 9 splits into 3 and 3. So if I'm making groups of 2, I have a 3, a set of 3's, a set of 2's, and a 5 left over. When I look at b to the fifth, I have 5 b's. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These 2 b's make a pair, these b's make a pair, and I have 1 b left over. So to rewrite this expression, I have -5 out in front times 3 times 2 times b, and then inside the square root I have 5b. Now we can simplify that outside. -5 times 3 is 15 times 2 will give me a -30. b times b is b squared times the square root of 5b. Alright, looking at number 13, I have a negative out in front, and so I'm going to keep that out in front. This 12 will break down, sorry, I shouldn't be breaking this down yet. I'm going to multiply first. 12 times 12 is 144, and this is under the square root. And x to the third times x to the first gives me x to the fourth when I add those exponents. Now I'm going to go ahead and simplify. I still have the negative out in front, but the square root of 144 is 12. So I can take out a 12, and x to the fourth means I have 4 x's. So I'm going to take out 2 x's, and I get -12 x squared. Number 4, I have a coefficient of 4 and a coefficient of 1. 4 times 1 gives me 4. 3 times 3 is 9. And r squared times r squared is r to the fourth. So 9 factors down into 3 and 3, and r to the fourth is r times r times r times r. When making groups, I'm able to put the 3's together, 2 of the r's together, and the other 2 r's together so that nothing is left behind. I keep my coefficient of 4, I take out the 3's, and I take out the r's. When I simplify, I get 12r squared. Alright, looking at 15, we're moving into division. So the first thing I want to do is see if there's anything that can be simplified. Here I have a 16 in the denominator, the square root of 16, which can be broken down just to equal 4. So on top I have 5 square root of 5, and on the bottom I have 4 times 4, because the square root of 16 is 4. So on top I get 5 square root of 5, and on bottom I just have the number 16. I'm finished here because nothing else can be simplified. Looking at 16, I notice I can't simplify my fractions, but once again, this is a very similar setup. I have the square root of 16, which equals 4. So on top, I'm going to keep 5 square root of 15. On bottom, I have 4 times 4. When I multiply that out, 4 times 4 is 16. And once again, there's nothing else I can do here, so that's my final answer. On number 17, keep in mind we have a negative 4 over 3 square root of 2. There's nothing more I can do to simplify, So I'm going to multiply, but remember, we cannot have a square root in the bottom, in the denominator. So I'm going to multiply the top and the bottom by the square root of 2. On top, I'm going to keep the negative. I get negative 4 square root of 2. They cannot be combined because one is a coefficient and one is a radical. On bottom, I'm going to keep my coefficient of 3. And then a square root of 2 times the square root of 2, well, that equals square root of 4, which equals 2. So I'm just going to, I know that square root of 2 times square root of 2 is just 2. So I get negative 4 square root of 2 over 6. And then finally I need to simplify my coefficients here. They're both divisible by 2. So for my final answer, negative 4 divided by 2 is negative 2 square root of 2. 6 divided by 2 is 3. Number 18, I have square root of 5 divided by square root of 2. So I cannot have this in the denominator. I need to multiply the top and bottom by square root of 2. On the top, I multiply, because they are both in the radical, I can multiply 5 times 2, and I get square root of 10. And on the bottom, square root of 2 times square root of 2, once again, gives me the square root of 4, which just equals 2. So I have square root of 10 over 2. I cannot simplify this further because factors of 10 are 5 and 2 with no match. So this is my final answer. Alright, these are the last two. I'm going to look at number 19. On number 19, I have 4 square root of 2 divided by 3 square root of 5. Once again, there's no simplifying I can do up front, so I just need to get rid of this radical in the denominator. I'm going to multiply the top and the bottom by the square root of 5. When I multiply the top, I'm going to multiply the radicands together. So I get 4 square root of 10 divided by 3 times 5, because square root of 5 times square root of 5 is 5. Then I get 4 square root of 10 over 3 times 5, which is 15. Because the 4 and the 15 have no common factors, I cannot simplify, and this is my answer. Finally, on number 20, I have 2 divided by 5 square root of 2. Once again, there's nothing I can do to simplify, but I do need to get rid of this radical. I'm going to multiply the top and bottom by square root of 2. On top, I get 2 square root of 2. And on bottom, I multiply these radicands together. I get 5 times 2. So on top, I have 2 square root of 2, and on the bottom, I have 10. I can simplify these coefficients. 2 over 10, they're both divisible by 2. So I get 1 square root of 2, or just square root of 2, over 5. Alright, and that is it for our quiz review. I hope that was helpful, and